Once again, good day everyone. Welcome to topic number 2, which is about the agrarian reform of the Philippines. Now, land ownership, how is it important to have a land ownership? That is a big question. Please take note that when we are talking about land ownership, yung pagmamay-ari ng lupa, we are also talking about land and power. Because having a land is equals to having a greater power. Now, how can we say that land is equals to power? Paano natin masasabi na ang pagkakaroon ng lupa ay pagkakaroon din ng kapangyarihan? Let us all remember that whoever owns a wide land usually have a greater power. The one that has control, the one that has an authority over a piece of land has a greater power. Now, what was the connection? What was the connection of this to the agrarian reform of the Philippines? Agrarian reform is the law that were made for our country, specifically to give lands, especially to our farmers. Now, our farmers are considered to be as essential workers of our country. Kasi sa kanila nang gagaling yung kinakain natin. I personally believe that if the farmers were not involved at all in our country, basically, magugutom yung mga tao. Wala tayong makakain. That is how vital the role of the farmers in our country. Now, land ownership is part of the issues regarding the agriculture of the Philippines. Now, first, ano nga ba yung mga issues when we talk about the land ownership? First, land ownership for the farmers is very important because it rather ensure that all the crops that they will generate will go directly to them. Halimbawa, kapag ikaw ay isang magsasaka at mayroon kang lupa na iyong sinasaka at ang sinasaka mong lupa ay pagmamay-ari mo, eventually lahat ng mga products na ma-generate ng lupa na pagmamay-ari mo will go directly to you. So, what is the issue in the land reform of the Philippines? So, the issue is that farmers do not have their own land. Again, farmers do not have their own land. They are just renting or leasing the land that is owned by other people. That is the reason why is it that land is equal to power. If the land will be removed to those who hold the power, they will be removed from wherever they are. They will lose their authority. And agrarian reform in the Philippines has something to do with politics, with our economy. So usually, those who have wider land are the one who rules the politics. And at the same time, because of this problem in land ownership in our country, it also affects our economy. If only the farmers will be given their own land, yung kanilang sinasaka ay sa kanila mismo, to be planted with crops, with etc., they will also have the opportunity to earn bigger income. Mabibigyan sila ng pagkakataon na mas mapalago ang kanilang sakahan, at the same time mas malaki yung kanilang profit, yung kanilang income. And definitely the effect of that will have a lower price of agricultural products. Because the more process that the products will undergo, the price of that product will also increase. Halimbawa, yung lupang sinasaka ng isang magsasaka sa isang rural area is rented. Eventually, maghahati pa sila ng yung totoong may-ari, ng landlords ng lupang sinasaka niya. And the next process of that, of course, the merchants will buy the products on a lower price, and that will also affect the cost of that product the moment that it will land into urban areas. And because in the first place, if the land is owned by the farmers, they do not have to rent. They do not have to pay fees to the owners of the land, and the owner will not get his commission as well to the agricultural products gained from that certain land. Okay, now let us go to the history of agrarian reform in the Philippines. So the agrarian reform of the Philippines, it is a 100-year history of unfinished reforms after the colonizers invaded the country. Imagine, napakahabang taon na unfinished reform after the colonizers invaded our country. Now, before the Hispanic period, there are no ownership cultivators, only communal lands. And during the Spaniards, nung dumating ang mga Espanyol dito sa Pilipinas, they implemented the following. Una, encomienda or royal land grants. They also implemented Maura Decree, 1 year for title, unrecognized of local customs. They also implemented establishments of pueblos, mortgage o pagsasanla, and inquilinos or the tax paid to the friars. During the arrival of the Americans, they implemented the following. The Philippine Bill of 1902, which set the ceiling on the hectares of private land and corporations. Another land reform that was implemented by the Americans was the land registration of 1902, the private owners through torrents system. They also implemented public land 1903, which introduced the homestead system in the Philippines. The Cadastral Act, Survey of Land, and the Friars Land of 1904, which is the lease and sale of land. Now, on 1935 Constitution, during that time the president was Manuel L. Quezon, he established the following. The Rice Shared Tenancy Act of 1913, which gives 50% tenant-landlord relationship. So 50% will go to the tenants and the 50% will go to the landlord. Next was the regulation of the 10% interest and no dismissal of landlords and a contract for 1 year only. Now, on the arrival of the Japanese in the Philippines, during that time, the Japanese occupation in the Philippines, the hukbalahap, hukbong laban sa mga Hapon, controlled the whole Central Luzon. Peasants earned fixed rental of land, and also peasants armed themselves and were against the Japanese. On the time of Manuel A. Rojas, his policies on land reform is the Tenant Act or the 70-30% to landlords, tenants, and regulated share tenancy. So 70% will go to the landlords and the 30% to the tenants. That was the policy on land reform that was implemented by Manuel A. Rojas. On the other hand, the former President Ramon Magsaysay policy on land reform, he regulated Agriculture Tenancy Act of 1954, tenure of tenants and landowners. And at the same time, the Land Reform Act of 1955, the distribution of rice and corn lands over 200 hectares for farmers, and 600 for corporations. During the time of former President Diosdado Macapagal, policies on land reform, Agricultural Land Reform Code, distribution of private lands to farmers on easy term of payment. Pwede siyang hulug-hulugan para eventually yung land ay mapupunta na talaga sa tenants. Now, retention limit of 75 hectares and exemption rule of big companies and transfers of landlordism. On the time of former President Ferdinand Marcos Sr., policies on land reform is the Republic Act 6390, the Agrarian Reform Special Funds Act. It finances the agrarian reform programs. Nagkaroon ng fund sa pag-finance ng mga programa ng agrarian reform. And the Tenant Emancipation Act or the Operational Land Transfer. And the Presidential Decree number 27, the 7 hectares upset. So this was the history of the land reform in the Philippines. But again, up until now, we do not have a definite programs that will eventually help the farmers of our country. If the farmer owns the land, it will lower the price again of the agricultural products. Mas mura, mas madami na ang yung makakabili. Yung mga taong hindi makakabili because the price is lower, eventually makakabili na sila. Ibig sabihin lang nun, mas kakaunti na lang yung mako-consider natin na talagang poorest of the poor. Mas marami na yung makakakain, especially to those who are struggling to live. Which means that it has, again, a direct effect to the economy of the country. So the land ownership, mayroon direct na effect sa country, sa economy ng country. So imagine, if there are a lot of laws that was established about land reform, why is it that isa pa rin siya sa malaking problema na until now, hindi pa rin maisolba ng Pilipinas? Because most of the land that are identified by the government that needs to be distributed to the farmers were not distributed. Hindi pa na ipamimigay ang mga na-identify nilang lupa na ibibigay sana nila sa mga magsasaka. And that one of the concerns that we have is our agrarian reform. It was tied with ownership of the land. At the same time, nakaangka din siya sa politics and sa economy ng ating bansa. Now, as students, what can you do? Ano kaya yung pwede nyo magawa para matulungan ang isa sa problema ng ating bansa, especially in land ownership, in the agrarian reform of the Philippines? First, support the flight of our farmers. Pinaka-basic na pwede ninyong magawa is to support their agricultural products. Bilhin natin ang mga produkto ng mga farmers because that is the source of their income. Yun yung source ng kanilang income. And if we are not supporting our farmers, sino ang bibili ng kanilang mga produkto? With that, this is Mr. Steve Michael Tagat. I hope you have learned something today. God bless and keep safe.